I'm Grace Irving, 62 years old, and this is the story of how I disappeared from my son's life, exactly as his bride requested. The image haunts me still. Standing in that empty house, our home of 30 years reduced to echoing footsteps on hardwood floors. The $5,000 wedding dress I'd bought for my future daughter-in-law hung there like a ghost, but the woman who was supposed to wear it never knew I'd discovered her terrifying secret. One day before the wedding, when Victoria looked straight into my eyes and said, "The best wedding gift you could give us is to disappear," I did exactly that, but not the way she expected. Before I tell you how I turned my disappearance into their worst nightmare, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story truly resonates with you. I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now, let me take you back to where it all began, to the day I received my own son's wedding invitation. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning, my name scrawled carelessly across the envelope like an afterthought. Mrs. Grace Irving. Not mom, not mother, just my formal name as if I were some distant relative. My fingers trembled as I opened the cream-colored cardstock, the embossed gold letters announcing Michael Irving and Victoria Sterling's union at the Charleston Harbor Resort. 300 guests, and I'd learned about it the same way everyone else had, through the mail. I set the invitation on the kitchen table, the same table where Michael had done his homework for 18 years, where I'd helped him with his medical school applications, where we'd celebrated his acceptance to Johns Hopkins. The morning sun caught the gold lettering, making it gleam like a mockery of everything I'd sacrificed. 15 years. That's how long I'd been doing this alone. After Tom died of pancreatic cancer, leaving us with medical bills that ate through our savings, I'd promised him I'd make sure Michael became the doctor he'd always dreamed of being. "Take care of our boy," Tom had whispered, his hand weak in mine. "Make sure he has everything he needs." And I had. God knows I had. Every morning at 5 a.m., I'd put on my scrubs and head to Charleston Medical Center for my 12-hour shift as a registered nurse. The irony wasn't lost on me, caring for other people's loved ones while barely having energy left for my own. Then 3 nights a week, after everyone else went home, I'd change into my second uniform and clean office buildings downtown until 2 a.m. My knees still ache from all those hours on cold marble floors, scrubbing away other people's messes. Michael hadn't been home in 3 months. His text messages had grown shorter, more sporadic. "Busy with residency, Mom. You understand." Of course I understood. I'd understood when he missed my birthday. I'd understood when he canceled Christmas. I'd understood when he forgot the anniversary of his father's death. Mrs. Thompson from next door had stopped by yesterday while I was repainting the front porch. "Getting ready for the big day?" she'd asked, her eyes bright with neighborly curiosity. "Must be so exciting having your boy get married." "Oh yes," I'd replied, not mentioning I'd learned about the wedding the same way she had, through gossip at the grocery store. I'd spent the last 2 weeks transforming the house. New curtains in every room, fresh paint in the foyer, professional landscaping that cost more than I made in a month. The caterer had been confused when I called to add extra hors d'oeuvres to the rehearsal dinner menu. "But Ms. Sterling already approved everything," she'd said. "She said she was handling all the details." Of course she was. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. Through the peephole, I saw Victoria standing there alone, her blonde hair perfectly styled, wearing a designer suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. She was studying our house with calculating eyes, her gaze lingering on the slightly worn porch steps, the older model car in the driveway. I opened the door with a smile I'd perfected over years of dealing with difficult patients. "Victoria, what a lovely surprise!" She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her heels clicking against our hardwood floors like a countdown to something inevitable. "Mrs. Irving," Victoria said, her smile never reaching her eyes. "We need to talk. Privately." The way she emphasized that last word made my stomach tighten. I'd been a nurse long enough to recognize bad news approaching. It had a particular weight to it, like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. "Of course. Would you like some tea? I just made a fresh pot of chamomile." "No," She walked past me into the living room, her eyes scanning every surface like an appraiser. "This won't take long." I watched her pause at the mantelpiece, examining the family photos. Michael's graduation, Tom's last Christmas with us, our wedding photo from 32 years ago. She picked up that last one, studied it, then set it down slightly off-center. "You've been married to a doctor," she said. Not a question, but a statement. "So you understand the importance of appearances." "Tom was a general practitioner, yes. He believed in serving the community." How quaint. She turned to face me, her blue eyes cold as winter rain. "Michael has bigger ambitions. He's been offered a position at Sterling Medical Group after his residency." "Did he tell you?" Sterling. Her father's practice. Of course. "He hasn't mentioned it." "No, I suppose he wouldn't. He's been worried about how you'd take it. The practice is in California. We'll be moving right after the honeymoon." California, 3,000 miles away. I kept my face neutral, a skill honed by years of delivering bad news to patients' families. Victoria settled onto my sofa, Tom's favorite spot, crossing her legs elegantly. "Mrs. Irving, I need to ask you some questions about your financial situation." "I'm sorry?" "Your assets. This house, your retirement savings, life insurance policies. Michael and I are planning our future, and we need to understand what responsibilities we might inherit." The word inherit hung in the air like a threat. I was 62, not 82, but she was already calculating my expiration date. "I manage fine," I said carefully. "Do you?" She glanced pointedly at the water stain on the ceiling I hadn't been able to afford to fix. "This house must be what, 40 years old? The property taxes alone must be crushing on a nurse's salary, and those night shifts cleaning offices. Yes, Michael told me. That can't be good for someone your age." Each word was precisely chosen, designed to cut. She knew about the cleaning job. Michael had told her about my second job, the one I'd taken to pay for his textbooks, his residency interview trips, his graduation suit. "I do what needs to be done," I said. "That's admirable, really. But Michael's embarrassed, you know, when his colleagues found out his mother was scrubbing toilets to make ends meet. Well, it doesn't reflect well on a rising surgeon, does it?" My hands clenched in my lap, but I kept my voice steady. "I've never asked Michael for anything." "No. But your very existence asks something of him, doesn't it?" Victoria stood, smoothing her skirt. "The monthly calls about home repairs you can't afford. The guilt when he can't visit because he's building his career. The constant reminder of where he came from versus where he's going." She walked to the window, gazing out at our modest neighborhood. "My family's attorney mentioned something interesting. Did you know that in South Carolina, adult children have no legal obligation to support aging parents? Not financially, not physically, nothing. Why are you telling me this?" She turned back, and for the first time, her smile seemed genuine, genuinely cruel. "Because I want to offer you a solution, a gift, really, for both you and Michael." She reached into her purse, pulling out her phone. "I've been looking at some lovely assisted living communities. Quiet, dignified places where you could make friends your own age. Medicare covers most of it, and what it doesn't, well, the sale of this house would more than cover it. You want me to sell my home? I want you to consider what's best for everyone. Michael needs to focus on his career without distractions. You need proper care as you age. And frankly, Mrs. Irving, you must be exhausted. Wouldn't it be nice to just let go?" Let go. As if my son were a balloon I'd been clutching too tightly. "I should go," she said, heading for the door. "But I did want to ask you something. A special favor, really." My heart was already sinking, knowing whatever came next would be worse than what came before. Victoria paused at the door, her hand on the knob, then turned back with theatrical slowness. "Actually, there is one wedding gift you could give us, something that wouldn't cost you a penny." I stood there, my mother's china cabinet behind me, filled with the dishes I'd been saving for Michael's wedding since he was born. "What kind of gift?" The gift of absence. She said it so casually, like she was asking to borrow sugar. The best wedding present you could give us, Mrs. Irving, is to disappear from our family. The words hit me like physical blows. I gripped the back of Tom's chair to steady myself. Excuse me? You heard me correctly. Victoria stepped closer, her voice dropping to a confidential whisper. Look, I'll be frank. You're a liability. Michael's colleagues, my family's friends, they move in different circles. When they ask about his family, do you know how hard it is for him to explain that his mother is a night shift nurse who cleans offices, that his father died broke, that he grew up in this, she gestured around the room, situation? This situation, I said slowly, is the home where I raised him, where his father and I loved him. Love doesn't pay for Harvard Medical School connections. Love doesn't get him invited to the right dinner parties or golf clubs. She pulled out her phone, scrolling to a message thread. Would you like to see what Michael really thinks? She held out the phone. The contact name was Mom, but the number wasn't mine. The messages were from Michael. I know, babe. She's exhausting. The guilt trips never stop. Once we're married, we can distance ourselves. Your dad's connection is worth more than her feelings. My legs felt weak. That was Michael's writing style, his way of shortening words. But it couldn't be real, could it? That's not... Michael wouldn't... Wouldn't he? Victoria pocketed her phone. Mrs. Irving, I'm trying to be kind here. You could bow out gracefully. A sudden illness, a last-minute emergency, something that prevents you from attending the wedding. Then gradually, naturally, we just lose touch. You're asking me to abandon my son. I'm asking you to love him enough to let him go. She opened her purse again, this time pulling out a brochure. Sunset Gardens Assisted Living. They have an opening next month. The timing would be perfect. You'd miss the wedding due to the move, and then you'd be too busy settling in to visit. Eventually, Michael would understand you've moved on with your life. And if I refuse? Victoria's sweet smile turned sharp. Then I'll make sure Michael chooses. And Mrs. Irving, I promise you, he won't choose you. Not when his entire future is at stake. My father owns the practice where he'll work. My connections will determine his career trajectory. And me, I'm carrying his child. The room spun. You're pregnant? 6 weeks. We haven't announced it yet, saving it for the wedding reception. Another reason why stability is so important right now. Michael needs to focus on providing for his real family, not managing his mother's needs. She dropped the brochure on the coffee table, right next to the wedding invitation I'd left there. The glossy photos showed smiling seniors playing cards, eating in sunny dining rooms, prison dressed up as paradise. I should mention, Victoria added, checking her diamond watch, that Michael's already signed a prenup. My father insisted. It protects both our assets and ensures that any elderly care responsibilities remain separate from our marriage. So even if you did need help later, well, legally I wouldn't be obligated to provide it. My mouth was dry as sand. Does Michael know you're here? Who do you think sent me? She laughed, a tinkling sound like breaking glass. He's too much of a coward to do it himself. Always has been, hasn't he? Even as a child, I bet he made you fight his battles. That was true. Michael had always been sensitive, conflict avoidant. I'd protected him from bullies, from harsh teachers, from the reality of our finances after Tom died. Maybe I'd protected him too much. Victoria moved toward the door again. Think about it, Mrs. Irving. The wedding is in 36 hours. You could give your son the greatest gift, a clean slate, a fresh start, a life without obligations to the past. Isn't that what every mother wants? For their child to soar? She opened the door, pausing on the threshold. Oh, and if you do decide to come to the wedding? Well, I've already told my family you have early onset dementia, so any outbursts would just confirm what they expect. The door closed with a gentle click, but it might as well have been a gunshot. Can you imagine the pain of your own child wanting you to disappear? At that moment, my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. But sometimes those broken pieces become sharper than any weapon. If you've ever felt betrayed by someone you loved most, leave a heart in the comments. I see you, and I understand that pain. And if this story is touching something deep in your heart, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Because what I did next, nobody could have predicted. The night was long, and my tears were many, but by dawn, I had made a decision that would change everything. I didn't move for an hour after Victoria left. I sat in Tom's chair staring at that glossy brochure, at the smiling seniors who probably had children who actually visited them. The house felt different now, poisoned by her presence, by her words. Every photograph on the wall seemed to mock me, all those years of sacrifice, and for what? By midnight, I'd cried myself empty. The photo albums were spread across the living room floor. Michael's first steps, his Little League games where Tom coached despite being exhausted from double shifts, his high school graduation where I'd worn the same dress I'd worn to Tom's funeral because I couldn't afford a new one. In every picture, I was smiling. In every picture, I thought I was building something that mattered. At 2 a.m., I made a decision. If they wanted me to disappear, I would, but not the way they expected. I called Harold Brennan, Tom's old attorney who'd handled his estate. He'd retired but still did occasional work for old clients. "Harold, I'm sorry to wake you, but I need to sell the house, immediately." "Grace, what's wrong? Is Michael all right?" "I need this done quietly and quickly. Can you help me?" There was a pause. Harold had known us for 20 years. "I'll be at your house at 8 a.m. We'll figure this out." After hanging up, I powered up my ancient laptop. Victoria Sterling. The name yielded hundreds of results: charity galas, society pages, her father's medical practice. But I kept digging, using the research skills I'd learned helping Michael with his papers. And then, on page 6 of a Google search, I found it. A wedding announcement from 2 years ago. Victoria Morrison marrying James Morrison in a small ceremony in Nevada. The photo was grainy, but it was definitely her, wearing a simple white dress, smiling at a man who wasn't my son. My hands shook as I screenshot everything. Morrison. She'd used a different last name. Was she divorced? The records were hard to find, but Nevada had online databases. I searched for divorce records, for annulments, for anything. Nothing. Which meant, "Oh, Michael," I whispered to the empty room. "What have you gotten yourself into?" I spent the rest of the night researching, printing, documenting. By 6 a.m., I'd found 3 different social media profiles for Victoria under various names. Victoria Sterling, Victoria Morrison, Victoria Blackwood. Different hair colors, different cities, but the same calculating eyes. And in each profile, she was connected to young doctors, medical students, men with promising futures, and, presumably, trusting mothers. Harold arrived promptly at 8, his white hair messy, his kind face concerned. "Grace, what's this about?" I showed him everything. The wedding invitation I'd received through the mail, Victoria's visit, the brochure for the assisted living facility, the screenshots of her multiple identities. Harold's expression darkened with each revelation. "This woman is coming after your assets? She's already got my son. The house is just a bonus. And Michael knows about this?" I showed him the text messages Victoria had shown me. Harold studied them carefully. "Grace, these could be fabricated. Anyone can create fake message threads. But what if they're not?" My voice cracked. "What if my son really wants me gone?" Harold set down his coffee cup, his lawyer instincts kicking in. "Then we protect you first. I have a client who's been looking for a property in this neighborhood. Cash buyer, can close in 48 hours. But Grace, are you sure? The wedding is tomorrow. If I'm going to disappear, I need to do it now. What about the wedding venue? The deposits?" I laughed, but it was bitter. "I paid for everything, Harold. The venue, the flowers, the catering. It's all in my name because Victoria said it would be easier for tax purposes. I believed her." Harold's eyes gleamed. "Then legally, you can cancel it all. Every last rose petal." He made some calls. Within an hour, I had a cash offer for $20,000 over asking price. The buyer wanted to remain anonymous, but would transfer funds immediately. By noon, the papers were signed, the money was in my account, and I had 48 hours to vacate. I hired a moving company, the expensive kind that worked fast and asked no questions. "Just the essentials," I told them. Everything else stays. While they worked, I made my own calls. The venue, the caterer, the florist. I'm terribly sorry, but we need to cancel. Family emergency. Some required penalties. I paid them gladly. Each cancellation felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. But I wasn't done. I had one more card to play, one more truth to uncover. I hired a private investigator, someone Harold recommended. I need everything on Victoria Sterling Morrison Blackwood by tomorrow morning. That's a rush job. It'll cost— I don't care what it costs. Because if I was going to disappear, I was going to leave the truth behind. Michael deserved that much, even if he didn't deserve me. The next morning came fast and brutal. My phone had 17 missed calls from Michael, but I didn't listen to the voicemails. Not yet. I had too much to do. The private investigator, a woman named Janet Chen, met me at a coffee shop downtown. She slid a thick folder across the table. Your future daughter-in-law has quite a history. I opened it with trembling hands. Marriage certificates, 3 of them. Victoria had been married 3 times, and according to the records, she'd never legally divorced James Morrison, her second husband. She's a bigamist? That's the legal term, yes, but it gets worse. Janet flipped to another section. She targets medical professionals specifically. Her first husband was a resident in Boston. She cleaned out his accounts and disappeared when he discovered she was having an affair with another doctor. The second, James Morrison, is still looking for her. She took his mother's jewelry collection, family heirlooms worth over $200,000. My coffee turned cold as I read. Police reports, fraud allegations, a pattern of deception spanning 8 years and 4 states. Why hasn't she been arrested? She's smart, never stays in one place long enough, always has a plausible story. And her father, he's not really her father, by the way. Robert Sterling is actually her Mark from 5 years ago. She convinced him she was his estranged daughter from a college relationship. He believed her, even changed his will. But he owns a medical practice. He's Michael's future employer. Janet shook her head. He owns nothing. She's been slowly transferring his assets to offshore accounts. Your son isn't getting a job. He's becoming her next victim. I felt sick. I need to warn Michael. Do you? The same son who sent you those messages? I thought about those texts, about Michael's absence, his distance. Then I thought about the boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who cried when his goldfish died, who held my hand at Tom's funeral and promised we'd take care of each other. I need copies of everything, and a USB drive with the digital files. Janet handed me both. What are you planning? I'm going to disappear just like they wanted, but I'm leaving breadcrumbs behind. I drove to the bank next, withdrawing my savings, closing accounts I'd held for 30 years. The teller, who'd known me since Michael was in diapers, looked concerned. Is everything all right, Mrs. Irving? Just starting fresh, I said, managing a smile. The college fund I'd started for my future grandchildren, the one I'd never told Michael about because I wanted it to be a surprise, held $47,000. 15 years of adding every tax refund, every Christmas bonus, every penny I could spare. I transferred it all to a new account in a different bank, one Victoria would never think to look for. By 3 p.m., the moving truck was gone with my essentials, Tom's photographs, his medical bag, my mother's china, the important papers. Everything else, the furniture, the decorations, the memories, stayed behind like props on an abandoned stage. I stood in the empty living room, writing my letter on the only piece of furniture left, Tom's desk. Too heavy for me to move, too precious to leave without a goodbye. Dear Michael, by the time you read this, I'll have done what Victoria asked, disappeared from your life. The house is sold, the wedding is canceled. Your bride got her wish. But before you marry her, you deserve the truth. The USB drive attached to this letter contains everything. Your fiancé isn't who she claims to be. She's been married before. She's still married, actually. She's wanted in 3 states for fraud. Robert Sterling isn't her father, and there's no job waiting for you in California. I know you might not believe me. You might think this is a desperate mother trying to hold on to her son. So don't take my word for it. Call the private investigator. Call Harold Brennan. Call the police departments in Boston, Nevada, and Miami. Or don't. Maybe you knew all along. Maybe those text messages Victoria showed me were real. Maybe you really are embarrassed by your mother who worked 2 jobs to put you through medical school. Either way, I'm done. I've spent 15 years living for you, and now I'm going to live for me. The house money is mine. The retirement savings are mine. The life ahead is mine. I loved you more than life itself, but I'm learning that sometimes love means letting go, not because someone demands it, but because you deserve better than people who only see your worth in what you can sacrifice for them. Your father would be heartbroken to see what you've become, or maybe he'd understand better than I do. He always said I loved too hard, held too tight, gave too much. Be happy, Michael. Or don't. It's no longer my concern. The woman who used to be your mother. I sealed the letter in an envelope, taped the USB drive to it, and left it on the desk. Then I took the wedding dress, that $5,000 confection of lace and dreams, and hung it from the ceiling fan in what used to be the dining room. Let them find it there, spinning slowly like a ghost of what might have been. One last thing. I pulled out my phone and typed a message to the anonymous buyer. The house is yours. Check the desk drawer tomorrow. You'll understand everything. The response came quickly. I already do. Thank you for saving my son. R.S. Robert Sterling, the real one. The sun was setting as I took one last walk through the empty house. Each room held ghosts. Tom teaching Michael to tie his shoes in the hallway, birthday parties in the dining room, Christmas mornings by the fireplace we rarely used. But ghosts don't pay bills, and memories don't keep you warm when your son chooses a stranger over you. I left my keys on the kitchen counter, along with a note for Robert Sterling. She destroyed your family, too. Don't let her destroy his. My car was already packed with just the essentials. As I drove away, I didn't look back. Not once. The rearview mirror might as well have been painted black. The phone rang. Michael. I let it go to voicemail. Mom, where are you? The venue just called saying you canceled everything. What's going on? Victoria's hysterical. Her family flew in from California. Mom, please, this isn't funny. Call me back. Not, I'm worried about you. Not, I love you. Just concern about Victoria's hysteria and her family's inconvenience. I drove through the night, stopping only for gas and coffee. The plan was simple. Disappear completely for at least a week. Let them discover the house sale on their own. Let them find the letter. Let the truth unravel like a cheap sweater. By midnight, I was 300 miles away, checking into a modest hotel under my maiden name, Grace Paulson. The desk clerk didn't ask questions when I paid cash. In my room, I finally allowed myself to break down completely. 30 years of memories, 15 years of single motherhood, countless sacrifices, all reduced to a cruel request to disappear. I cried until my chest hurt, until my eyes burned, until there was nothing left but hollow exhaustion. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed with another voicemail. This time, Victoria. You bitter old witch. You think you've won something? Michael will never forgive you for this. We know you're just having a tantrum. When you come crawling back, don't expect us to care. You're dead to us. Dead to them. As if I hadn't already been dying slowly, sacrifice by sacrifice for years. The next morning, what should have been the wedding day, I turned off my phone completely. I sat in that hotel room, watching the sunrise, and made a decision. I wasn't just going to disappear, I was going to resurrect. I thought about what I wanted, what I'd given up. Before Michael, before Tom's illness, I'd dreamed of opening a bakery. I'd won blue ribbons at the state fair for my pies. Tom used to joke that I could solve world conflicts with my cinnamon rolls. But medical school tuition doesn't pay itself, and dreams don't feed children. Now, though, I had the house money, the savings, the freedom. I drove to a small town called Millbrook, about 50 miles from the hotel. It was the kind of place with one main street, where everyone knew everyone, where life moved slower. There was a for lease sign in the window of a corner shop right next to a busy coffee place. The realtor, a chatty woman named Beth, was delighted to show it. It used to be a bakery, actually. The owner retired to Florida. All the equipment's still here, ovens, mixers, display cases. Just need someone with vision. Vision. I'd had tunnel vision for so long, focused only on Michael's future. Now, for the first time in 15 years, I could see possibilities that belonged only to me. "I'll take it," I said. 6-month lease to start. Beth looked surprised. "Don't you want to negotiate? Check the equipment? Have someone inspect?" "I want to start over. Can we do the paperwork today?" While Beth prepared the lease, I sat in what would become my bakery, imagining it filled with the smell of fresh bread, the chatter of customers, the simple joy of creating something with my own hands. My phone, still off, weighed heavy in my pocket. I knew there would be dozens of calls, texts, voicemails, but they could wait. That evening, I turned it on briefly. 43 missed calls. I didn't listen to any voicemails, but one text caught my eye, from an unknown number. "Mrs. Irving, this is Robert Sterling, the real one. I found your letter. Victoria has been arrested at what was supposed to be your son's wedding. Your evidence, combined with mine, was enough. Your son is safe, though probably devastated. I thought you should know. You saved him, even if he doesn't deserve it. Thank you." I stared at that message for a long time. Victoria arrested. At the wedding that wasn't. In front of all those guests who'd come to celebrate a lie. I typed back, "Take care of him if you can. He's lost now, but maybe he'll find his way. Don't tell him where I am." Understood. But he should know. Those text messages she showed you were fabricated. I have proof. Your son never said those things. My hands shook. Michael hadn't betrayed me, not with words anyway. But his silence, his absence, his willingness to let Victoria handle everything, those were betrayals too, just quieter ones. I turned the phone off again. Tomorrow I would start baking. Tomorrow I would begin again. Tonight I would mourn the son I thought I had and the mother I'd let myself become. The wedding dress would be spinning in that empty house, a ghost of expectations that nearly killed me. I could picture it all perfectly as I sat in my hotel room that wedding morning, even 300 miles away. I knew my son's habits, his reactions, his breaking points. I could see it unfolding like a movie I'd directed, but wouldn't stay to watch. Michael would arrive at the house at 8 a.m. He was always punctual, even for his own neglect. He'd use his key, call out "Mom" to the empty rooms. The echo would be the first sign something was wrong. I imagined him walking through those bare rooms, his footsteps loud on the hardwood floors we'd refinished together when he was 16. He'd find the wedding dress first, hanging from the ceiling fan like a surrender flag, turning slowly in the air conditioning's breeze. His hands would shake as he reached for the letter on his father's desk, the only piece of furniture left behind. The USB drive would feel heavy in his palm, such a small thing to destroy a life. But then, Victoria had destroyed mine with just a few words, so perhaps it was fitting. He'd call her first, of course. "Something's wrong. Mom's gone. The house is empty." Victoria would arrive in her wedding day makeup, her hair half done, probably with her father in tow. I could see her perfectly, that controlled mask finally cracking when she realized I'd actually done it. I'd disappeared, but not the way she'd planned. The USB would be the bomb that exploded everything. Michael's laptop opening those files, his face draining of color as he saw marriage certificates with Victoria's name and other men's, police reports, fraud allegations. The private investigator's detailed timeline showing Victoria was still married to James Morrison when she'd accepted Michael's proposal. "This is fake," Victoria would say. "Your mother is trying to destroy us." But Robert Sterling, the real one, the one who'd bought my house, would arrive then. I'd given him a key and told him to come at 10 a.m. He'd walk in holding his own evidence, 5 years of being conned by a woman pretending to be his daughter. "Hello, Victoria," he'd say. "Or should I call you Jennifer? That's the name you used when we first met." The beautiful chaos of truth. Victoria's elaborate construction collapsing like a house of cards in a hurricane. Michael standing there in his wedding suit, realizing the woman he'd chosen over his mother was a professional con artist. The police would arrive next. Robert had promised to call them, to time it perfectly. They'd have warrants based on the evidence I'd provided, the documentation Janet Chen had compiled. 3 states' worth of fraud charges. Bigamy, identity theft. I could see Victoria's face changing from indignation to fear to rage. She'd turn on Michael then, the mask completely gone. "You pathetic mama's boy! You were so easy to manipulate, so desperate for someone to take control, to make you feel important." The guests would start arriving at the venue about then, in their finest clothes, expecting champagne and celebration. Instead, they'd find police cars, a missing bride, a devastated groom, and an empty house where the reception should have been. Michael would try to call me. Again and again my phone would ring. But I wouldn't answer. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He needed to sit in the wreckage of his choices, to understand that silence and absence were their own forms of cruelty. I wondered if he'd remember all those nights I'd come home from cleaning offices, my knees swollen, my hands raw from chemicals, still making him dinner because he was studying. I wondered if he'd think about the Christmas I'd skipped buying myself a winter coat so he could have the right stethoscope for his clinical rotations. Probably not. Children rarely remember the sacrifices until they're forced to make their own. The hotel room felt like a cocoon. Safe, quiet, mine. I ordered room service. When had I last done that? When had I last spent money on myself without calculating what Michael might need instead? My phone buzzed with a text from Harold Brennan. "It's done. She's been arrested. Your son is, well, he's destroyed but safe. The Sterling family is pressing charges. You did the right thing." The right thing. Such a simple phrase for such a complicated action. I'd saved my son from a predator, but I'd also abandoned him on what should have been his wedding day. I'd protected him one last time, then cut the cord with surgical precision. Another text, this one from Robert Sterling. "Your son is asking for you. He's staying at my house tonight. His apartment was in Victoria's name, too. Another thing she lied about. Should I tell him anything?" I thought for a long moment, then typed, "Tell him his mother loved him enough to let him go, and loved herself enough to not look back." Outside my hotel window, life went on. Cars passed. People walked their dogs. The world didn't stop for one woman's liberation or one man's devastation. That was oddly comforting. Tomorrow, I'd sign the bakery lease. Tomorrow, I'd start buying supplies, testing recipes, building something that was mine alone. Tomorrow, I'd be Grace Paulson, baker and business owner. Tonight, I was still Grace Irving, disappearing act extraordinaire, the mother who'd given her son exactly what his bride had asked for, and so much more. Sometimes, disappearing isn't running away. It's the most powerful way to finally be seen. As I sat in that hotel room, I wasn't alone. For the first time in 15 years, I had myself for company, and she was enough. What do you think? Does Michael deserve forgiveness? Can a mother's love survive betrayal, even unintentional betrayal? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story is resonating with you, if you've ever had to choose between being needed and being free, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear how this story ends, because the biggest surprise was still to come. 3 days after the wedding that wasn't, Robert Sterling called me directly. I'd been elbow deep in flour, testing recipes in my new bakery's kitchen when the phone rang. "Mrs. Irving, we need to talk, in person. It's about Victoria, but more importantly, it's about your son." Something in his voice made me stop everything. "I'm 300 miles away, Mr. Sterling." "I know exactly where you are. I've known since you left. Please, 1 hour of your time. I'm already driving there." 2 hours later, Robert Sterling walked into my empty bakery. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe late 40s, with kind eyes that held a familiar pain. He carried a thick folder and a laptop bag. "You knew," I said. It wasn't a question. "When you bought my house, you already knew everything." "I've been tracking Victoria for a year," he admitted, sitting on a flour-dusted chair. "She's destroyed 7 lives that I know of. Your son was going to be number 8. "But why? Why let it go so far? Robert opened his laptop, showing me a complex spreadsheet, names, dates, amounts. Because I needed her to commit enough crimes in one jurisdiction to guarantee prosecution. South Carolina has some of the strongest fraud laws. Your evidence, combined with mine, means she won't escape this time. You used my son as bait? No. His voice was firm. I tried to warn him, 3 times. I sent anonymous letters. I even approached him at the hospital. He wouldn't listen. He was, forgive me, but he was so desperate to be chosen by someone like Victoria that he ignored every red flag. That hurt because it was true. Michael had always needed validation, especially after Tom died. I'd tried to fill that void, but a mother's love wasn't what he'd been seeking. There's more, Robert continued. Victoria isn't just a con artist. She's my former patient. My blood chilled. Patient? I'm a psychiatrist, Mrs. Irving. Victoria was referred to me 5 years ago after her first arrest. Antisocial personality disorder with narcissistic features. She's incapable of genuine emotion, of real connection. She targeted me first, convinced me she was my daughter from a relationship I'd had in college. I believed her for 2 years. How did you discover the truth? My real daughter found me, the actual child from that college relationship. She'd been searching for me for years. He pulled out a photograph, a young woman who looked nothing like Victoria. When I confronted Victoria, she disappeared with $200,000 and my mother's jewelry collection. The same story she told about James Morrison's mother's jewelry. She recycles her cons, adapts them to each victim. Your son fit a specific profile: medical professional, recently established, emotionally vulnerable, with a single parent who could be isolated and eliminated from the picture. I felt sick. Eliminated? Not physically, but socially, emotionally. She studied you, Mrs. Irving, knew exactly what to say to make you leave. She counted on your love for your son being stronger than your self-preservation. She was almost right. But you fought back. That's what she didn't expect. Her other victims' parents either didn't care or were already estranged. You're the first who loved their child enough to save them while still walking away. Robert pulled out a check. This is from the insurance settlement from what Victoria stole from me. I want you to have it. The amount made me gasp. $50,000. I can't accept this. You saved my investigation. Your evidence was the missing piece. And he hesitated. I feel responsible. I could have stopped her years ago if I'd been stronger, pressed charges instead of letting shame keep me quiet. We all do what we can with what we know at the time. He smiled sadly. Your son said the same thing. He's staying at my house, by the way. His apartment, his car, even his bank accounts, they were all in Victoria's name. She'd convinced him it was for tax purposes. How is he? Broken, humiliated, angry, mostly at himself. He's been going through the evidence obsessively, trying to understand how he missed it all. Robert paused. He found your letter. He's read it probably 100 times. Those text messages she showed me were fabricated. I have the forensic analysis to prove it. Victoria had an app that creates fake message threads. She'd done it before with other victims, turning them against their families. My hands trembled around my coffee cup. He never said those things. No, but he did something worse, didn't he? He let her speak for him, let her handle you, let her push you out without ever asking why you were really pulling away. Tears burned my eyes. Yes, he wants to see you. I'm not ready. I understand, but Mrs. Irving, there's something else you should know. Victoria's pregnant. Actually pregnant. The test results were in her medical records we subpoenaed. The room spun. Michael's child? DNA test pending, but the timing matches. She's about 8 weeks along. A grandchild, with a mother in prison and a father who'd lost everything. What will happen to the baby? That depends on a lot of factors. Victoria's looking at 15 to 20 years if convicted on all charges. The child would need a guardian. I stared at him, understanding dawning. You're not here just to thank me. I'm here to tell you that your son needs you. Not as the mother who sacrificed everything, but as the woman who was strong enough to walk away. He needs to learn that kind of strength. 2 weeks later, I agreed to meet Michael. Not at my bakery, that was my sacred space, but at a small cafe halfway between us. I arrived early, needing time to prepare myself for seeing my son's face again. He was already there. Michael looked like he'd aged 10 years in 3 weeks. His designer clothes were replaced with a simple t-shirt and jeans. His perfect surgeon's hands trembled around his coffee cup. When he saw me, he started to stand, then sat back down, uncertain of everything now. "Mom." The word came out broken. I sat across from him, keeping the table between us like a shield. "Michael." "I didn't know." He started immediately. "About Victoria. About what she was. I swear I didn't know." "I know. The text messages were fake." Relief flooded his face, followed immediately by shame. "But I still let her. I let her push you away. I let her handle everything. I was such a coward." "Yes," I said simply. "You were." He flinched like I'd slapped him. Good. Truth was supposed to hurt sometimes. "I keep thinking about Dad," he said. "What he would think of me now. His son, the brilliant doctor who couldn't see a con artist right in front of him." "Your father would be disappointed," I said, not softening it. "Not because you were conned, but because you forgot everything we taught you about family, about loyalty, about love." "I know. God, I know. When I read your letter, when I saw what you'd discovered, what you'd done to protect me, even while walking away." He stopped, composed himself. "You sold our house." "I sold my house. It stopped being ours when you decided I was an embarrassment." "I never said that." "No, you just let Victoria say it for you. You let her come to my home, threaten me, humiliate me, and you never once checked on me. Never once asked why your wedding was being planned without you. Never once wondered why your mother was suddenly absent." Michael's face crumpled. I was so stupid, so fucking blind. It was the first time I'd ever heard him curse. Part of me wanted to correct him, the mother's instinct still there, but that wasn't my job anymore. "Robert Sterling told me about the baby," I said. His hands stilled. "DNA test confirmed it's mine. My child with a sociopath who's going to prison." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. I lost my job. The hospital doesn't want the scandal. I lost my apartment, my savings. Victoria had access to everything. She cleaned me out while she was being arrested, transferred everything to accounts I can't trace." "Where are you living?" "Robert's guest house. He feels responsible, says I'm another victim of Victoria's, but I'm not, am I? A victim doesn't choose the victimizer over his own mother." "No," I agreed. "You made choices. Bad ones." We sat in silence for a moment. Around us, normal people lived normal lives, had normal conversations. We were islands of dysfunction in a sea of everyday happiness. "I went to therapy," Michael said suddenly. "Robert insisted. The therapist says I have abandonment issues from Dad dying. That I latched onto Victoria because she took control, made me feel taken care of instead of being the caretaker. And that's probably true, but it's not an excuse. You had abandonment issues too. Dad left you with a teenage son and a mountain of medical debt. You didn't con anyone. You didn't abandon anyone. You just worked yourself nearly to death for me." I felt tears threaten but refused to let them fall. "I chose that, just like you chose Victoria. Can you ever forgive me?" I thought about it, really thought about it. Forgiveness isn't a switch, Michael. It's a process, and it requires change from the person who hurt you. What are you changing? "Everything. I'm starting over. Robert got me a job at a clinic in Vermont. Basic care, nothing prestigious. I'm going to work, save money, figure out how to be a father to a child whose mother is a criminal, and I'm going to therapy twice a week." "That's a start. Could you ever be part of our lives again? The babies, I mean. He or she is going to need family. Real family." "I don't know," I said honestly. "I'm building something new here, a life that's mine. I'm not ready to give that up. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking if maybe, someday, there might be room in your new life for us. Not as the son who takes everything and the mother who gives it, but as, I don't know, something healthier. I looked at my son, really looked at him. He was broken, yes, but maybe that was necessary. Maybe we both had to break completely before we could rebuild. Call me in 6 months, I said finally. After the baby's born, after you've had time to figure out who you are without Victoria, without me fixing everything. Then we'll see. That's more than I deserve. Yes, I said, standing. It is. I left money for my coffee and walked out. I didn't look back, but this time it wasn't from anger. It was from hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could both become people worthy of each other's love. 6 months later, my bakery was thriving. Grace's place had become the heart of Millbrook's morning routine. The smell of fresh bread and cinnamon rolls drew people from 3 towns over. I'd hired 2 assistants and was considering expanding to evening hours. I was frosting a birthday cake when my phone rang. Michael. Mom? She was born yesterday. 7 pounds, 2 ounces. Perfect. A granddaughter. Despite everything, joy bloomed in my chest. What's her name? Emma Grace, after you. I had to sit down, my legs suddenly weak. Michael, I know I said 6 months, and I know you might not be ready, but she's here, and she's beautiful, and she needs her grandmother. I need my mother. I looked around my bakery, my sanctuary, my proof that I could build something from nothing. Then I looked at the photo Michael texted, a tiny baby with his nose and somehow Tom's chin. I'll come see her, I heard myself say. Just a visit. That's all I'm asking. The drive to Vermont took 8 hours. I spent it remembering another drive, decades ago, bringing Michael home from the hospital. Tom had driven so carefully, terrified of every bump. We'd been so young, so certain that love was enough. Michael met me in the hospital lobby. He looked healthier, steadier. The last 6 months had aged him in good ways. He looked like a man now, not a boy playing dress-up in a doctor's coat. Thank you for coming, he said simply. Emma was in the NICU, not because anything was wrong, but because her mother was in federal custody and there were legal complications. She was perfect, though. 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes, and when she opened her eyes, they were Tom's exact shade of brown. She's beautiful, I whispered. The court says I can take her home tomorrow. I have full custody. Victoria signed away her rights in exchange for a reduced sentence, 12 years instead of 20. Are you ready to be a single parent? Michael laughed, but it wasn't bitter. I watched the best single parent I know do it for 15 years. I learned from the master. I made mistakes. You made sacrifices. I'm learning the difference. We stood there watching Emma sleep, and I felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not yet, but possibility. I have something for you, Michael said, pulling out an envelope. It's from the house sale. Robert told me you sold it to him. This is a check for the full amount. It's yours. It was always yours. Michael, no. Mom, please, let me do this one thing right. You bought that house. You paid for it twice over with all the refinancing for my education. Take it. I looked at the check. It would be enough to buy the building where my bakery was, to expand, to maybe even open a second location. I'll take half, I said. You're going to need the rest for Emma. Deal. Over the next 3 days, I helped Michael prepare his small apartment for a baby. We didn't talk about Victoria or the past. We focused on bottles and diapers, on baby proofing and feeding schedules. It felt like a truce, delicate but real. On my last morning, as I taught Michael how to properly swaddle Emma, he said, I've been thinking about what you wrote in your letter, about learning to love yourself enough to walk away. And I think that's what I'm trying to do with Victoria, love myself enough to walk away from what she represented, the easy path, the prestigious life, the someone else making all the decisions. It's a start. Would you consider letting us visit? Not to stay, not to intrude on your new life, but maybe Emma could know her grandmother. The real one, Not the one who sacrificed everything, but the one who owns a bakery and makes the best cinnamon rolls in 3 states? I looked at my granddaughter, sleeping peacefully in her father's uncertain but determined arms. "Once a month," I said. "You can visit once a month. We'll see how it goes." That's more than I hoped for. As I drove back to Millbrook, to my bakery, to my life, I thought about circles and cycles, about breaking patterns and building new ones. Michael would never be the son I'd imagined, and I would never again be the mother I'd been. But maybe we could be something else. 2 adults who'd learned the hard way that love without boundaries is just another kind of prison. My phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Emma just smiled. I think she knows her grandmother loves her." I smiled too, alone in my car, free in my choices. Sometimes the greatest gift isn't presence or absence. It's the wisdom to know which one to choose. Sometimes you have to disappear to be seen. Sometimes you have to break to become whole. And sometimes, just sometimes, the ending isn't an ending at all. It's a beginning, disguised as a goodbye. So that's my story. Not a fairy tale ending, but something more precious. Truth, dignity, and boundaries that protect love instead of destroying it. Do you think I should fully forgive Michael? Or are some wounds meant to keep their distance while healing? What would you have done in my place? Share your thoughts below. If this story touched your heart or made you think about your own relationships, please like and subscribe. Your support helps me share these stories that remind us all. Loving someone doesn't mean accepting every hurt. Until next time, remember, you're worthy of respect, especially from those who claim to love you.